Okay, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you. Good evening, and once again, summertime done come and gone. My oh my. And, so it is now the end of summer and the beginning of another fall, and it is now September 13th. This is the planning board meeting for the town of East Hampton. We have a few matters on for work session, and we're going to be going over some wrap-up memos and other matters. And we have a couple of small matters on for the regular meeting. So let's get started with Montauk Sunset Cottages. Brian Frank is going to be taking us through that one, and then he'll be able to leave. And, Member Parsons has that one, and go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank, Chief Environmental Analyst in the town's planning department. Montauk Sunset Cottages was last discussed by this board at a public hearing on July 26th of this year. At that public hearing, or prior to that public hearing, there were three letters of support. Two of them were for neighboring property owners on East Lake Drive. The third was from somebody who may be associated with doing some work on the property, so it may not be a true public comment. At the actual hearing, there was one speaker, and I think it's most accurate to characterize a neighboring comments to this board at that hearing as expressions of concern more than objection, and those concerns focused on the scale of the proposed development, noise, and largely security concerns. As somebody living across the street on East Lake Drive with young children, and the amount of, if you've ever been up and down East Lake Drive when any of the waterfront properties or some of the other properties are under construction, there is often staging beyond the sites that the properties where the property work is going on. At a prior meeting, this board had discussed, and the applicant agreed to having the work occur within the perimeters of the property and not staging any vehicles on East Lake Drive. There will be project limiting fence, 4-foot safety fencing around the perimeter of the around the work area. That will be coupled with sediment control, either staked straw bales, or what's better actually is a wire reinforced silk mesh. That was the language in the zoning board of approval to protect the wetlands from sedimentation. So I hope that that those concerns and the response were accurately articulated in the planning department's wrap-up memo from last week. The application, the memorandum ends with a list of potential permit conditions, draft permit conditions. I'll go through them if you'd like. I would prefer to just make myself available if you have any questions. If there's anything in there that you would like me to elaborate on or have a question about, I'm happy to do my best to answer.
Thanks very much. Randy? You're muted. Mute. You're still muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
For some reason, everything's very tiny. Well, first of all, I recognize that and commend Brian and the planning staff for all the work they did to try to get this project into some kind of shape and have it be a net plus. And there was really a lot of work and a lot of thought that went into it. I think we've come so far now that this is probably what's going to get approved. But I have to say that to me, actually, let me have a question for Brian. Could you tell us what variances were issued in the end? What the variances on this were?
Yes, I can. If you just give me one moment, I can tell you from the zoning board determination. I think I have a copy of it here. I know that there were bluff crest setback variances from the relocation of one of those double cottages that was closest to the shoreline. That cottage was shifted from very close to the northern property line. It was attached to one of the units, still near the northern property line, but farther away. So what was a double unit and a single unit will now be a triple unit. I think the setback from the bluff crest on that was a little over 50 feet. Give me a moment. I do think I have the zoning board's decision here. And I can tell you the exact numerical variance. Yes, bluff crest variances of 37 feet and 41.5 feet were required to allow the combined cottages of number 2, 4, and 5 and their associated decking to be located 63 feet and 58.5 feet respectively from the bluff crest, where a 100-foot setback was required. And that building also required wetland setback variances of 25 feet and 30 feet for the building and deck respectively to be located 75 and 70 feet from the tidal wetlands. Cottage 12 required a 5-foot wetland setback variance. That was another cottage that was being relocated from the northern property line to a slightly more central location on the property. That was a 5-foot wetland setback variance. Yeah, that required a 5-foot variance.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the final plan we have is it's an increase in lot coverage and an increase in total lot coverage on the property. And as I see it, the rebuild of the cottages with basements and decks and, you know, new insulation, etc. I can't help but see this as a intensification or an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use, where we end up with 14 units on 3.8 acres. I know we're getting the septic. I know this is, you know, I respect anybody's opinion that this is a good compromise. But I think given you know, these are not going to be used for a workforce housing. And yet we're ending up with a density here of about a quarter-acre zoning. And there's nothing really that prevents these from becoming year-round second home weekend houses. So I feel like it would have been good for us to have more mitigation on this project, such as the elimination of several of the cottages. For example, that would have been, to me, that would have been a more balanced mitigation, given what appears to me to be an intensification of the use. I also don't completely get how this is a single-family home with a writer or an artist retreat next door. And what happens if the next owner doesn't like artists or is not so inclined? There's nothing called a artist retreat in our zoning. So I'm not sure I see how these are gonna work, coexist with each other, with the large pool and the sauna, etc., and all these cottages next store. So basically, that's all I have to say. I don't, I know how long we've worked on this and how much of and how much good conditions the zoning board and Brian have imposed. I just think from day one that this was it's a great real estate investment on part of the buyer, but I just think it's an intensification and expansion of a pre-existing use, and we didn't review it that way. And I don't think there's enough mitigation for what they're doing. That's it.
Put it up to the board. Anybody have any comments on this application? Anyone?
Not really.
Well, I guess, I would be a yes vote on it. I think that we've gone through the process. Brian has done a thorough job as always, and Brian certainly is looking out for the environment. And I think the planning department has led us down a road which is a good compromise and a good project, considering it already did exist. Again, this is one of those we would never approve if it was proposed, as it is, and it was undeveloped previously. But considering what it was, considering the environmental improvements, I support the application.
Yeah, I think these comments don't do anything to further this particular application. It's not really relevant to denying or approving it. But I think it's worthwhile just venting or mentioning that, these pre-existing non-conforming situations are really bad situations because we can't do anything about it. And like Randy said, it is an intensification of use of something that was an intensification of use to begin with. And the other thing that bothers me about this application is that they didn't want to do anything about the Brian, what was that bulkhead?
It was a bulkhead. Was it a bulkhead?
Yes.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
And there's something mysterious about that as to, where they suddenly pulled that back. And I'm afraid that may lead to something down the road that may not be to our approval. But anyway, so those are my comments.
Well, I just want to say one more thing. I think we should be a little careful with throwing around words like intensification of use, because those are legal terms encompassed by the code. And I think this isn't that, or we wouldn't be able to approve it, or it hasn't been determined to be that, which I guess would be a building inspector determination. I don't think we ever asked them if it was. But, our job is to apply the code as it exists. It's fair for you to think the code ought to be different, but I want to be careful if we say this is an intensification or an expansion of use, because it just technically isn't, or we've never determined it is throughout the whole process.
I think the size of the cottages are staying the same, just the basements were for utilities. Yeah, so I agree with you.
If you start with the pre-existing non-conforming aspect of it, that's always a tension. Not attention, a tension, TENSION, between that we face, because somebody buys a property that has a pre-existing non-conforming use on it, and they're not buying it to let it sit there as it was. They have ideas for its development, and the question is, how far is that development getting from the pre-existing non-conforming use as they found it? How far is that going to go, or how are we going to, as a board, allow that to go? And the line is intensification of use. And there's always a question of, well, have we really intensified the use? Basically, what I see this as is modernization of a dilapidated property. That's what it mostly comes out. And by working with the planning department, particularly with Brian and his incredibly good work on this, and it's to be complimented, which I'm doing now, that has not been, that modernization is not been environmentally detrimental. I agree with you about the bulkhead. I'd sure like to know why they don't want that. But everything else going on in this application, I think it's going to be positive in an environmental sense. Would we like everything to stay the way it was? Yes, but this property was purchased by a new owner who has ideas for it, and they worked with the planning department, and I think that they've come up with something that I can.
But we are getting something better. We're getting a new septic system.
Yeah,
We're
That's the
getting,
thing. It's-
you know,
I don't think we do want it to stay like it was.
And it's being
No, no.
pulled away from the blood crest, and the variances are smaller than would have been if they had kept it the way it was.
I'm soft now.
Yeah.
I agree with all that, but what I find really different is they're putting in a 60-foot pool. And I've got a 30, and I really encourage the item 6 about a covenant. I have a 36-foot pool, and that's for one family, that's pretty good. So I want to make sure that this pool is only for the owners of the property.
That's been represented
Yeah.
to us, but that's right,
what the case is.
right, Brian, that the pool, that's all for the house, right? That's not for use of the.
That's correct. In prior discussions, the prior work session meetings, there were discussions, concerns were expressed about the new residents on the property being commingled with the resort units on the property. The applicants have represented that the residence is for the use of the owners. There was an expression that I couldn't tell you which meeting it was, but there was a suggestion about a covenant that would keep the residential use separate from the resort units. That has been incorporated into the draft conditions of approval
That's number 6.
to address that concern.
And that applies to the yoga house as well, yoga studio, right? Isn't there, there's a yoga studio next to that pool?
There's a, there's a pavilion in another portion of the property, and
I thought there was a studio that had bathrooms and changing
there
rooms,
is
that sort of thing.
the pool house is not located near the swimming pool. That's also in the southeast corner of the property.
It's also for the use of the residents of the house.
I did not draft the language of the determination that way, but I could revise it.
That was represented to us, yeah. So I'll,
It's a sauna as well, right?
yeah, it's a sauna, yoga studio, changing rooms, that kind of thing.
The intention of those is to be only for the residential use, correct?
Well, that was my understanding, yeah.
I think that was mine too. Do we want, is that specified? I'm reading
It's
number
not.
6. It only talks about the pool.
It only mentions the residents in the swimming pool.
If we add that, there wouldn't be a problem with that?
I don't think it's an improvement.
I think we should consider
It's
that.
just,
But that was specifically
All right,
represented.
then can we add that as a resident, as a, I think, Brian, if you check with council, I think you'll get a positive feedback on that.
Okay.
So I just want to say, I think we all have some misgivings about it, and some questions. And I think, Randy's point about future use, another owner down the line, it's always an issue in situations like this where there's a pre-existing non-conforming use that's being modernized. But, it is what it is. We and the ZBA and others have spent a lot of time crafting this into something that is approvable, and I support it.
All right, let me do the questions. Have the public's comments been addressed by the application?
Yes.
You all agree on that? Are additional conditions of approval necessary, or are modifications to the proposed conditions necessary? And I think we all
Articulated.
we like that the pavilion, whatever it's called, pavilions,
Those appurtenances in the southeast corner of the property will be
you'll identify them.
added, yes.
Is the application ready for approval
With that.
with that change to the CNR?
Yes.
Everyone? Andy?
I'll abstain, Sam.
Okay, thank you. Okay, very good. Again, Brian, thank you very much for your very, very good work on this.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Next is the site plan special permit evaluation for 178 Buckskill Road LLC. It's a very thorough report. It was prepared by Daniel, who we have not yet met. He's been very tied up with ARB stuff. So we're going to have Tina shepherd us through this. Are you with the applicant? Very good. Well, the way it works is we'll hear from the planning department. You'll then have an opportunity to speak. And then Sharon, this is yours. Sharon will lead us in a discussion. Okay. Go ahead, Tina.
Okay, just give me a second here.
Yeah, he's a new, yeah, but he's got mostly ARB stuff. We're gonna bring in them like the next steel. So they can give it to him.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little, I can't get the GIS to share, so I'm just gonna share the survey.
Well, I think you have you have the map of the property.
Yeah, no, I
and the
do.
survey. It's all in the application, in
the.
the package, if we need to look at it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna put up I just was sitting here working on it, and then as soon as it's time for it to go, it didn't work. So I'll put up the survey.
Have you been there? Have you guys skated there?
No.
No one?
Years ago, my daughter's 28 years old.
Yeah, take the kids to two holes in the water. And ice skate.
Yeah,
Because,
that doesn't even ice up anymore.
well, I was gonna say, because if you really want to ice skate, you know, it has to be an element of risk.
It doesn't freeze up.
Okay, so this is the application for 178 Buckskill Road. It's currently considered a minor site plan as it's only made to construct an approximately 350 square foot awning on the western side of an existing one-story clubhouse building. So you can see on the survey, here is the existing building. In red is the proposed awning. And there's an awning right here as well. So I'm circling with my cursor that's already existing. So the awning is proposed to match the eastern and western sides of the building. The site currently contains a clubhouse, 10 tennis courts, a deck, walkways, fencing, and a seasonal ice rink. The site is 3.1 acres, located in East Hampton, zoned A3 residence within the Pine Barrens and the Suffolk County groundwater protection area. With respect to seeker, the action is classified as type 2 and the seeker category is listed in the report. With respect to the minor scope of work proposed with regard to the awning, the analysis in Daniel's memo lays out that the subject property fronts both Buckskill Road and 7th Avenue, making it have 2 front yards per the town code. The submitted survey indicates a 34.3 foot setback from the front yard of 7th Avenue. However, in the A3 resident zone, 70-foot setbacks are required from the front yard. The planning board has the authority to waive setbacks for accessory structures per the code reference in the memo. So that's an item for discussion today, whether the planning board thinks that's appropriate. The rendering submitted for the awning just showed an awning covering the facility. It didn't show how on the other side, and there's a picture in the memo, there's size of the awning, like it's enclosed to provide protection from the elements. So we just wanted the applicant to confirm that the awning on this western side would only be covered on top. And, you know, the deck is, of course, existing, an existing facility. There is screening between 7th Avenue and the awning. So based on the site visit conducted by Daniel, it wouldn't be prominently viewable from 7th Ave. There are residences all along 7th Avenue and the main street shown here. With respect to the existing awning, we were looking in town records. It doesn't seem that that awning has received a site plan review. We wanted to confirm that with the applicant, if they're aware that they have approval for that. We had a preliminary conversation with buildings that they couldn't find the record either, so we just want to confirm whether or not there's site plan for that, and if not, we should incorporate the review of that awning into this exercise. We did also want to describe that this location has been the subject of a prior UR, that's urban renewal map modification, where a portion of 7th Avenue was abandoned and made part of this lot here that you're seeing. Originally, I understand that the abandonment of 7th Avenue was supposed to be complete, but however, this is an open right-of-way right now, providing access to the residences to the north of this location. So we are considering it a street with respect to the setbacks. To the applicant, we just said that they should ensure that the portion of 7th Avenue that was abandoned, the town board had approved this several years ago, be incorporated into the proper and the survey, as the survey properly show the status of the street as it stands now with respect to the area of the parcel. The remainder of the memo just request some clarifications of the survey. Not all the structures were shown as is typically required. Some of them are seasonal, which may be the reason why. However, it's important for us to have a full understanding of what's there, and the seasonal items could be shown perhaps in a different font or, like hashed way, just so we are aware of what is there. This site will also need architectural review board approval, of course, as it's a change to a commercial structure once the board is approving of it. And then lastly, based on the current scope, it would be a minor site plan because the improvements qualify and are less than 500 square feet. If the board wanted to waive a public hearing, that's something that they could determine in part of the discussion. However, if the other awning on this side of on the eastern side of the property does not have site plan approval, they likely would exceed the improvement threshold and could not get that exemption. So to conclude, the applicant's incomplete pending the submission of a clarified survey and confirmation regarding the eastern awning status and whether the proposed awning will include curtains.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Does the applicant wish to be heard? You'll need to step up to the podium and let us have your name, spell your last name, please.
My name is Deb Raleigh, R-A-W-L-E-I-G-H. My questions are, I did try to put the curtains on. I didn't originally because I felt then you weren't seeing what it was over. It's just sort of like a white curtain blocking everything that we had there. I was showing the other side, sort of inferring this is what the curtains will look like. I won't be blocking the view of what we're going to be blocking. Then I did see the notes on the meeting. I didn't see it until this afternoon. So I did put a call in to Buckskill, and I've not heard back from them. So I'm just not aware of what they did with the original awning. So I will have to touch base with them to figure all that out. What I would like to, I'm sorry, it's 7 o'clock. So I will have to check with them on that. And I would like a little bit of guidance on how do I proceed on both avenues. They've got approval and we're just not on the books, and how are we going forward from where we are? And then also I didn't do it right the first time, and how do we incorporate all this to move forward?
Well, we'll go through, you hear what our discussion, where it leads, and then that'll inform what you need to do, and you work with the planning department, and they'll give you some guidance.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sharon's going to now lead us.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't have a real problem with the awning that you're proposing, curtains or no curtains. I think they just want the application to be complete, and so that we know whether you're gonna have those curtains or not. And I think the biggest part is knowing whether you got permission for the other awning, right? Because that really just throws it to not being a minor application. So I think that's really important for us to know. And how you proceed with that is obviously try to get the information and present it to the planning department. And then they will review it, and we'll move forward knowing whether it's been approved or not approved in the past.
Meaning you'll come back here again.
You'll have to come back, well, yeah, present it to them, and then they'll rewrite the memo, and yeah. And then, so in general, I mean, I'm okay with relaxing that setback for this awning. It's already over an improved space, so there's already people on this decking, I'm sure, so you're just it'll be quieter, actually, if you've got the curtains and the awning for the neighbors. And then obviously, so all of this survey clarifications, I think I would just talk to the department. So they just want to see everything on a survey so they know exactly what the property looks like right now. And even though you're not changing it, just a solid, one map of everything and all the notations that they all match and they make sense.
Okay, on that, is it just on the survey where the rink is during the winter? Because it's not a permanent thing, so we have to survey coming out. Are we just drawing in the hockey rink?
Why don't you stay here, because the public needs to,
The public needs to hear you, and also, that kind of question is something you in the first instance direct to the planning department.
Okay.
I mean, that's not for us to say.
Okay.
Their planning department's going to give you a sense of what
they're just looking for a
the
complete
survey
record.
needs to include.
Right, and
Tell us.
that's where the temporary structures, where you're putting something up for the summer or for the winter. I didn't know that would necessarily need to be on a survey because it's not a permanent structure. So,
That kind of thing also might involve your narrative and your explanation of what you're doing. Because if members of the board have a question, if you're saying that it's going to be sometimes up and sometimes not.
Well, they asked for the hockey rink to be on the survey.
Mm-hmm.
The hockey rink is there in the winter. It's not there in the summer. It's on a tennis court, so the tennis courts are there. So how does that get put on a?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have any records, then it's impossible to do that. I think we can work with you. It's just, there was a lot of structures that were mentioned in the application. We know are there. We don't have any idea of where they are. So it's a difficult thing to review. If it's impossible to get on there, then maybe just a little bit of a better narrative or something just to help us make sure everything's in line. Because part of what we do is, like we did with the awning, like we're looking at the approvals that we have on file to make sure that what you're presenting and what's there now are consistent with the approvals that are on file.
Okay.
And then I think you need to research what's happening with this UR map modification,
Right.
with the abandonment and
That should be
clarifying
easy
that.
update. We can just send you the records. We found that the UR map modification was approved, but the survey doesn't seem to reflect like the final decision. So again, just a consistency issue.
Okay. And
We're going to continue our discussion. If we have questions, we'll raise them with you.
okay. Am I able to attend these meetings virtually?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You need to give us a heads up so that we can get you the link.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, to me, those are the two biggest issues, is cleaning up the UR map situation and whether the other awning was approved or not.
Assuming it's a minor.
Well, if it's a
site
minor,
plan, how are you on public hearing?
I think if it's a minor site plan, I'm okay with waiving the public hearing.
How likely is that?
Now, please, let us have our discussion.
Well,
okay?
it really depends on whether that other awning has been approved or not. Yeah.
So in the narrative, you say you want the awning for, keep customers out of the elements. I know there's an ice rink to the east. Is there an ice rink to the left there?
No, Jay.
Sorry.
She needs to be.
The microphone has to be able to,
No, it's still just the one ice rink, but the seating area that they wanted, they have the awning on the one end, and they have some seating in there where on the other side, I think that's more of I want to call it a lounge area, as opposed to putting your skates on.
Okay. But you're outside.
You're
And
outside.
you have portable heaters are on the other side nearer the rink. Is that right?
Right. They do have heaters in the.
And is that how it's going to be used when the awning is up in the wintertime?
I will confirm that. I've never been asked anything about the heating.
I've been there with my kids and we're either, I'm inside, they're outside. And there's the fireplace and you're either in the building or you're under that awning where there's some heat there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've never been to the other side.
Well, the other side would have been outside. You would have been outside on a deck.
Well, the existing awning, you're outside as well.
But there was no awning or anything.
But there was nothing over your head, on
Right
the
now.
other side.
The current awning that's up there now, you're outside.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to, I'm curious to hear what they have to say about that.
Okay, about heating
Are they
on.
going to, put heaters on under the new awning, the proposed awning, and have that be a space for parents who like to stay warm?
Yes, but you won't have visibility of your children.
Okay. So maybe it's an awning for the summer and keeping the rain off folks.
But you're still not playing tennis in the summer, and that's what you would be doing there. It's more, when you're sitting down between sessions, where they are, at least there are talks of having hockey clubs, teams, of actually, so they'll have times when they'll be off the rink and then they'll need somewhere to sit as well. And then this is somewhere that they can have that sort of group seating area.
Gotcha.
Tina, could you bring up the photo? If you have it, I know the thing's being a little difficult with you this evening.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'll just look at you. We have a photograph. The more squarer,
Yes.
on the left, is that a lawn? The one that's on the west?
I think it's a tennis court.
That's grass courts.
Yes.
Those are grass courts, okay. And this awning is going to give you a view, that area, you'll have a view of those grass courts.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Thanks. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Randy, do you have anything? Randy?
You're muted.
I'm just curious what the CO, if the planning department mentioned what the CO on the property says in terms of all the different uses. Is there a recent CO on the?
So, the records we consulted, we did not find evidence of the CO containing the second awning, the one that's existing, but, our records aren't always exactly 1000% accurate, so we wanted to make sure that we weren't missing something. There was a lawsuit involving this site So that also kind of made our records not as clear as they would be. But yes, the ice rink does have a CO.
Okay.
Here, right, this is not the CO, but this is the property records from the building department, which is showing right here, seasonal ice rink installed over the tennis courts. It says
So wonder if we could call it a seasonal, it's kind of a seasonal tennis court and a seasonal ice rink.
Well, when it's not an ice rink, it's
Anyway.
a tennis court.
no.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll find some terminology. Is the, the question, I guess, one question is does an ice rink have the same amount of traffic and et cetera as a tennis court? I don't know, it just raises questions when you have a dual use on, but
The ice rink-
that's not what's before us, right?
No, the ice rink is approved.
The ice rink is listed as an existing use, so I don't think we're,
No, there's a very
The CO
limited,
does say seasonal.
we have a very limited question here, and that's the whether the awning is appropriate for a setback waiver. That's the primary and essential question.
Okay.
All right, but if nobody else has any comments, let's move on to that very question. Do we agree that the awning is appropriate for a setback waiver?
I do.
All around, Randy, everyone? Randy? You said yes? Okay, we agree.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Should the applicant clarify if the proposed awning will have curtains? I guess we would like to know that. Should the survey be updated as requested? We go around, everyone agree? Absolutely. The applicant should, it's a question, so I'll ask it as a question. Should the applicant clarify if the eastern awning has site plan approval? Yes. Say yes, so we'll have to deal with that. And I guess we're gonna have to hold this question off because it's dependent upon whether the eastern awning has site plan approval. The last question is if the applicant is a minor site plan, does the planning board desire to waive the public hearing? And let's hold that.
Well, if it's a minor,
If it's a
it's
minor,
yes.
just to make sure we're clear on that, you have to either show that that's approved. If it's not approved, you have to take it down or put it on this application. If you do that, it can't be a minor site plan.
it raises it up.
So it's in your court there, but there's a path forward in any case.
But if it is, let's give the applicant some guidance. If it is a minor site plan, how do we feel about a public hearing?
Not necessary.
Not necessary? Ian?
Yeah.
Necessary?
Not necessary.
Nice.
Randy?
I don't know, I'm trying to remember if this is, I know this provides a lot of great opportunities for people and kids but I'm trying to remember if there was controversy between the neighbors and I don't remember if those neighbors would want to know about this.
Well, there was in 1978, but not.
Yeah, but it's been a while.
I know, exactly.
I'm just, ordinarily, I would, look towards having public hearing, but I think that ultimately, if we're just talking about an awning on this parcel, I don't see the need. Also, there's pretty substantial screening between the public and the neighboring residences. I am very sensitive to the fact that there are residences there, but this screening is pretty.
And it's also a patio that's being used.
And it is being used, yeah. So it's not as though it's going to be some kind of big change. So I would also be disinclined towards it. Okay, all right. So you'll need to find out that information. We'll send you a letter saying what it is we're looking for, and you'll work with the planning department, and we'll see you again. Okay? Virtually, if you insist. But I'm sure you can see the advantages of actually being in the room with us. So, not editorializing, but all right. Now we're going on to 219, 221 Panago Road, and Ian is recused. So we have the applicants in the back there. Welcome. Tina, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is the wrap-up discussion for the 219-221 Pansco Road Site Plan Special Permit application. There was a public hearing held on August 23rd. 2023. The site plan is submitted to facilitate several improvements at the stated address, including a new 2-story structure with a basement for storage, a first floor for an expansion of the existing Chris's restaurant, and a second floor with a 3-bedroom affordable apartment for staff housing. Demolition of existing structure on the 219 site is also proposed. So a public hearing was held in person August 23rd. 2 members of the public commented on the application, and a written comment letter was also received from a different commenter who did not comment at the public session. A brief summary of the comments is what I'm going to proceed with providing now, and some brief assessment of how the application is responsive to that comment. Regarding neighborhood character, there was a public comment that stated that while they were not opposed to the project, they felt it was appropriate to consider the context of changes that are happening, not just on the site, but in the surrounding area, with attention to residential neighborhoods and traffic, especially on Spring Close Highway. Regarding this, the planning department notes that, during the SECR evaluation, neighborhood character is one of those things that are considered. And for a site-specific project like this, we do look to say, well, if it's consistent with the zoning, it is kind of consistent with the character of the immediately adjacent area. Significant traffic increases are not anticipated with this, so we don't think this would trigger something more significant like a traffic light. A second public comment was regarding the location of the existing dumpster. This is an existing feature on the site plan where I'm putting my cursor over it right now. The adjacent property owner to the east indicated that the applicant was utilizing their parking lot for their dumpster operations, and that that shouldn't occur. In researching this, the planning department also attached to the file here a publicly recorded access easement that's shown on this property to the east, this right-of-way. For those of us familiar with the area, it is utilized to access this property and kind of this right-of-way to the north. We don't see any reason why this right-of-way cannot be utilized for this purpose. However, the stated concern was that the parking lot was being accessed, which does not, there was no contemplation of that in the previous discussions we've had on this application. And we agree it wouldn't be appropriate for the site operations here to encroach upon site operations here. So as a condition of approval, we think it's appropriate for the planning board to require the applicant to confirm how they're not going to access the private property beyond the easement to the east, or to move the dumpster enclosure, but that would likely be pretty troublesome in terms of all the discussions we've had thus far and settling on the site arrangement you see on the site plan, which I can bring up in a moment. A few other comments were received. Several of the commenters had as a theme parking on the site being constrained. This is something that the planning board has discussed multiple times during the review. Regarding this, we've all acknowledged the proposed action here won't solve the parking, but it should alleviate it. The spots on this lot here are now going to be devoted to the Chris's location. We've noted that there is parking in the right-of-way, that we've said we do not endorse that right-of-way as an emergency access right-of-way. It's not to be utilized for parking. There were no parking signs hung by the northern property owner, and we agree those are appropriate. Adjacent property owners are also free to hang no parking signs should they wish to put that message to people utilizing the site. And we do recommend that as a condition of approval, conflicting signage saying parking for Chris's only in areas that are not under control of Chris's be disallowed. So we had a situation during the site plan where there was signage hung that there was parking for Chris's here allowed. We believe they've taken that down and should stay down as a condition. Those were the major themes of the public comments, and at this time, we recommend the planning board should discuss the comments, determine if they believe they've been adequately addressed, and discuss the conditions of approval to determine if they are adequate or require revision should the board choose to grant approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Randy? Randy?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Tina has pretty much nailed it about the response. I think that we've adequately responded to the public. The dumpster issue is obviously has to be resolved. So we have to see how the dumpster will be accessed other than using the neighbor's parking lot.
They're not using.
Randy?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's the easement.
There's an easement.
It was alleged that they're using the neighbor's parking lot in the public comment. There's a 25-foot access easement. It stands to reason they could prove to us they don't need to utilize the adjacent parking lot, but it was alleged. I have no, by the adjacent property.
But if that, regardless of whether the allegation is correct, tell me if I have this wrong. Regardless of whether the allegation is correct or not, that issue of access for the dumpster is covered by the easement, correct?
I believe it should be. I don't see they couldn't contain to the easement.
Sam, do you think if it's access, but if a truck has to go perpendicular to the right of way in order to pick that dumpster up?
Well, the problem I think you have here is that you have an existing granted of record easement, and it says, this is paragraph 2A, grantee shall have the right to use the easement area for the purpose of vehicular access except delivery trucks to and from Route 27, also known as Panago Road, also known as Montauk Highway, to the right of way. So, dumpster removal is not delivery. It's the opposite. And I think it's covered.
Yeah,
I think that what we can have is a CNR saying that the dumpster shall be accessed pursuant to the already existing legally granted easement. And I think that should resolve the whole question.
I don't know. It's not that different from a delivery or a pickup. I don't know if it's possible to come in to pick up the dumpster from their own parking lot. That would solve it.
Well, but
They don't even.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I don't know if that. I'm not suggesting we eliminate parking, but couldn't the dumpster come and back up over their parking spaces and pick up? I mean, the truck pick up the dumpster from their own parking lot.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I think the way I see it is like it would have a hard time coming into that very narrow area, backing in and getting it and out. I mean, from what I can see from the site plan, it would be very difficult to do it that way. And I think you would get elimination of parking lots.
Yeah, and that creates, and that counters everything we've been trying to do here on this application.
Yeah.
So that's why, sometimes the answer is kind of already there. And it looks like those times.
Just the question
It's
I
a
have.
civil, yeah. Isn't it a civil matter if the truck is using the neighbor's parking lot? Isn't that a civil matter?
But they're not using their parking lot.
It's not. And if it is, that's something that somebody will raise and, whoever's doing that will have to deal with it.
I mean, the parking of the
In a
cars
legal
is
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the
But
cars.
not the dumpster.
I was just going to ask, is it possible for a truck collecting the dumpster could actually come in perpendicular and stay within a 25-foot easement? 25 feet isn't that much, right?
Yeah.
And truck actually back up and then lift the dumpster up the way that they typically are
We've been
lifted.
doing it. It's there.
Okay.
No, they should have been doing it.
But the neighbor is objecting. There's a parking issue and there's the dumpster issue,
They
right?
think it's their property.
Well, if there's a parking issue, that's something that is going to presumably be addressed by the covenants and restrictions, and they're making it very clear that the parking for this applicant is the parking that we're approving.
Right, but they're also alleging that this other issue exists with the dumpster pickup.
Yeah, but you see, but the thing is, whether they're alleging it or not, it's, as I read this easement, it's contemplated already. And the town's already.
I'm just saying, is 25 feet adequate to actually?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, didn't Tina suggest that they show us how they access the dumpster? If there's a truck, if a truck can, first of all, it's gonna block the easement. I don't think it's ideal. It's gonna block the easement as long as it's there. And Ed's question is, I think, right on. What if is the truck 25 feet or less in length?
Well, the truck is, I mean, it comes in, it picks up the dumpster, and I presume they use one of those overhang, hook things.
Where's it gonna make its 3-point turn to back up to
Randy,
the dumpster?
The problem is that you're trying to, you're raising questions that are already presumably addressed in the were addressed at the time the easement was granted. I
don't agree, Sam. I don't agree that the easement contemplated trucks. That's basically a delivery or a pickup with a dumpster.
I hate to be, honed to the language, but it says except delivery trucks. And if they wanted to accept, garbage trucks, if you will, you could have.
Well, there's access by trucks over the easement. Everybody agrees that's allowed. Whether a truck can park across the easement and make a pickup and deliver empty dumpsters, and whether it would fit without going into the neighbor's lot, I don't think we've established that. But
Can't they just dump it?
Yeah, you see the thing, I mean,
They just dump it into the truck and they put it back down.
get real technical here, but
They do have to be parked across.
and when a delivery truck comes in there,
They must be doing
they
it.
sit there for a while sometimes. and-
Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
we can't create more space here, right? I mean, this is sort of the problem. We're dealing with a very limited amount of space, right? And it seems like, to your point, this is covered in
That's the way I read it.
this language, in a practical sense. Is it really going to play out in the real world?
Well, I mean, if they can't get their dumpster picked up, they're gonna have to do something about it. I mean,
Yeah.
well, there are those small ones too.
Well, that's true.
There are those small dumps, trucks.
Randy, you have anything else on this that you want to impart before we continue?
no, I mean, I basically agree with Tina's memo that they should show us how the dumpster truck is gonna, how does it work? They pull in, they drive up the right of way, and then they do a 3-point turn and back up to the dumpster. I don't know. I mean, I think,
Go ahead.
That's not in here.
Because
I
I say,
think- I just think it-
right now we're in a wrap-up. Right now, we're in a wrap-up memo. And there's really only,
yeah,
number of questions that we need to address, or that we should be, not need to, but that we should be addressed. First of all,
well, that's one of them. That's one of them, though.
as what, as a CNR?
No, the dumpster access. I don't know. I think it'd be better if they
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
these are creative designers. I think it'd be better if they could figure out a way to get to the dumpster on their own property, and but that's what I think. And I think Tina asked that they show how they're going to gain access. We do that a lot with truck loading and unloading. Maybe they could, I don't know, they could take a look at their site. This isn't, what we're looking at is not the new layout anyway. It's not the new parking lot. So I don't know if there's a dumpster location possible.
Dumpster access plan is called for in the conditions of approval, number 5.
Right.
Yep.
So there you go.
So it's already there.
Oh, yeah.
The
It's
revised
already there.
dumpster access plan should be provided that allows access that does not encroach into the adjacent property parking lot to the east. But at the same time, if they have an easement access, an access easement to get in there,
But not to the parking lot.
they're not,
And so I specifically mentioned the parking lot because that was the concern. I don't think that they're accessing the access easement is an issue. But if they can give us like a diagram that just shows, okay, here's a good, here's where the truck's gonna go, here's how we'll unload in order to maintain our encroachment into the access easement, I don't see an issue with that.
So you'll work with them to get it,
Yes,
get that.
if the board thinks that's
Yeah, well,
appropriate.
it's in
yeah,
here.
that's it. Randy, does that work for you?
Yep, yep.
Yeah. All right, then anybody else have any questions, comments, issues they want to raise? Sharon?
Sorry, so I'm just looking, so there's also a condition of approval that they put no parking sign, okay.
Yeah, no parking sign. Yeah, that was
Okay.
an issue before, and it's definitely something they have to address. That's one of the CNRs.
Yeah.
All right. Have the public's comments been addressed by the application?
Yes.
Yes, all around? Okay. Are additional conditions of approval necessary or are modifications to the proposed conditions necessary? I think based on what we just read,
We're good.
we're good. We're good. Okay. Is the application ready for approval?
Yes.
Everybody? Randy?
Yep.
There you are.
Once we see that diagram, that
Right.
works.
Okay, so the applicant understands that, there's gonna have to be a little bit of an explanation here in accordance with CNR number 5. And when we see that, we'll see you again. Okay, thank you very much.
So just for my own clarification, is the board accepting if the planning board, that the board would make a decision next, week, that's the 62-day period's up, or do you
Oh,
want to
that's
see the
right, yes,
access plan
thank you.
first?
That's a very important point. We're under a 62-day deadline, so
Correct.
I guess what you'll have to do is you have to make sure that you meet with the applicant, and when's our next meeting? Next week. So that gives us time, and everybody should read the CNRs ahead of time and make sure that they say what we need them to say, and if we need to, hopefully, when we get to the meeting, we all agree that the language is good, and we don't have to take pencil in hand and tinker with it.
Okay.
It's on you.
Okay. Great.
And you. All right,
Go quickly.
very good, thank you all. Okay. Would you mind telling Ian, who's probably floating around out there? Thanks very much.
There's no light in there.
He's in the dark.
Jesus, what's going on?
Ian in the dark.
Yeah.
Strange.
Okay, finally, we have Sylvan Realty. And,
Yeah,
go ahead, Sharon, this is yours.
Yep.
this is the application for Sylvan Realty located at 44 3 Mile Harbor Road in East Hampton. There were 2 public hearings held for this application, just really briefly, one in April and the second on July 26, 2023. As we all know, after the first public hearing, there were some issues with the site plan that needed to be addressed, resulting in changes to the proposed scope and resulting in the second public hearing being held. The memo, the rest of the memo is going to go on just to discuss the comments received at the second public hearing, and I had attached the first public hearing report to the memo, so everything's all together. There were additional comments offered at the meeting regarding mass and scale. Some indicated that the scale of the building's out of context with the surrounding neighborhood. Others referenced that the reductions resulting from the pyramid law compliance efforts did mitigate the scale of the building at least somewhat. So to, reiterate how the planning board has discussed this in the past, there's an acknowledgement, there's residential properties surrounding this property on several sides, to the east, beyond this commercial industrial property to the north, and across the 3 Mile Harbor Road. However, it is, the site itself is a neighborhood business, and the uses contemplated and the scale proposed are generally consistent with the zoning regulations, except where there's nonconformities existing, which is also something that the board has spent a considerable amount of time discussing. It's also true that the gross floor area proposed is significantly increasing over what's existing, but again, that's still in conformance with the zoning. The site has for many years been a nightclub, and one of the potential benefits that was originally discussed with the application was that use would cease with a market thought to be more consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. One of the potential conditions could be that the applicant covenant that it will no longer be utilized as a nightclub. So I did want to suggest the board think of that. I didn't include it in the draft conditions at the end, so I just want to remember that that's out there for discussion. The next overall comment was that the building was in an inappropriate location with respect to the north, west, and east property lines. Again, that's another thing that has been discussed. Those property lines are, the encroachments there are mostly pre-existing non-conforming. It's a pre-existing non-conforming structure. They are not expanding into those except where a second story is being added in some locations, and all they are doing is permitted by the code. And so that has been, confirmed by both the planning board and the building inspector. The planning department, I'm sorry, and the building inspector. The comments also noted that there was concerns about the way the northern elevation of the building, this one here, was being represented. And looking at the landscape plan, which has been accepted by the planning department, they're using appropriate evergreen species to screen that area of the building, and we think it's appropriate what's being proposed. There was an additional comment regarding lighting, especially on the northern side of the site. In looking at this lighting plan again, I did notice, I think I've confirmed one of the fixtures proposed is actually not compliant with the planning board policy. So as a condition of approval, I'm suggesting that the applicant submit a fixture to the satisfaction of the planning department that complies with the guidance. Another comment there caught an erroneous notation that's no longer needed on the plan. That's correct. That should be another cleanup item. And the third comment regarding kind of the site layout was that there was no loading zone provided, but we do have a loading zone. The loading zone is proposed kind of on the eastern side of the site, away from most of the site activity, on a kind of non-perfect site plan. It seems to me that's the most suitable location for that, so I don't think that's a significant concern at this time. There were a few comments reiterated during the second public hearing about traffic. The applicant provided oral comments during the public hearing, indicated that the traffic volume was lower than an estimate we got from the town consultants working on the Springs corridor study. The concern that the applicant was responding to was that without a specific use, it was difficult to really understand the traffic impacts of the site. From the planning department perspective, that really means that it's appropriate to be conservative in traffic projections, which the Springs corridor projections likely were. We had discussed this with the board, indicating that we recommended a traffic study. The board had declined to require one at that time. So that's how that issue was addressed. There was another concern about trucks parking on 3 Mile Harbor. My understanding is that the planning board doesn't have authority to grant that. The planning board is considering the site development and has allocated the appropriate area for trucks. Trucks should not be utilizing 3 Mile Harbor as part of the approval of this. People brought up ZBA again, and that issue has been addressed by the town attorney's office. And then there were some comments regarding ensuring the apartments and commercial structures were maintained for affordable We're maintaining affordable rates for families that qualify and making these things conditions of the building permit. And we agree that those should be conditions of the building permit, and there's language here that is confirming that we want those as conditions of approval. In conclusion, at this time, it's appropriate for the planning board to discuss if they think the public comments have been adequately addressed with the application, or if additional conditions of approval are required, and if there's any modifications that the planning board feels necessary to the draft conditions as shown in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's a lot on the plate.
Yeah, but no, not really. This application has been in front of us quite a few times, and I think, with that discovery of the pyramid, I think we got a slightly better project out of that, which was great. So, I think the building is big, but I think we've done a good job of, hiding vegetation that's going to hide this building. And I do think it's gonna, once it's built and it's vegetated, it's not gonna be as massive as we think it is. I mean, when you go by day marks, there's no vegetation in front of that, and that's like, boom. I think this is gonna be hidden behind, it's gonna be kind of get tucked away. And, we're getting 2 affordable apartments. I think office buildings is gonna be a low impact use, and we don't know what's gonna go downstairs. So overall, I think, we've worked on this, and getting away from the nightclub is positive. And we have received letters from the neighbors, pretty happy about that. I mean, I was surprised to see that it opened this summer. It was there.
Turkish restaurant.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think they had some night, and they had some late night stuff
Did
going
they?
on there too.
Did they?
Yeah.
I
So-
must have missed that.
I never
No
seen
one
that.
invited me. Yeah, I know.
I did not have fun there. I did not have fun there. But I was told that by somebody else, and I was like, oh my God, really? I couldn't, because that hasn't happened since during COVID, I don't think so. The coverage has been reduced somewhat, so even though it's a bigger building, it's because it's gone up a little bit, not because it's gotten bigger this way. And then the rest is pretty much cleanup stuff. We've already voted on the traffic study. The ZBA made its determination, and I think Tina did a great job with these conditions of approval. I don't see anything to add. I think she's covered it.
Anyone else?
It's pretty fast.
Do we know do we have ARB approval yet or not yet?
I don't think so, right?
I don't
Yeah.
believe so.
Yeah, I don't think so. So that's a condition
So
of
that's a,
approval.
That's
That's a condition
of
of
a
approval.
building permit. It's a condition of a building permit, right? No building permit
Oh.
before a,
I think it's a condition of
Yeah, I mean,
approval. no?
they're not gonna be able to get a building permit before ARB.
okay.
Approval won't be valid because it'll be a condition of our approval.
Yeah,
Right, well, and we're up against the clock, right?
Yeah, we are. We have to approve this by the 26th, is it?
I mean, even if we say we approve it with that as a condition, if they don't get it, it's
Yeah,
not
well,
going
that's-
forward,
yeah,
so.
That's not on us, so.
Right, it's not, really right, it's not on us.
Anyone else have anything? No. Have the public comments, I'm gonna ask the questions, and have the public comments been addressed by the application?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Are additional conditions of approval necessary, or modifications to the proposed conditions necessary?
I think that we did talk about, and from the very beginning, the change away from the nightclub was part of this. So I do think it's a good suggestion that we put that in, because,
it is in there, so,
Good to know.
is it officially in?
yeah. It
I
is.
mentioned it, but I didn't put it in.
Oh, I thought I
so-
saw it here, nightclub, number 3. Acceptable to council,
No, that's the ARB is number 3.
no, nightclub, number 4, sorry.
Okay, great.
There we go.
I saw that in there.
Right. No nightclubs.
Yeah.
Agreed. Ready. Going in. Okay. Anyone else?
Not that there's anything wrong with
Nothing. Is the application ready?
It's bad juju at that
Is the
nightclub.
application, with that once. Is the application ready for approval? Everyone?
Yes.
Mandy?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll have to
There you
say
go.
yes. I have to say yes.
You say yes, thank you. Now, wasn't that worth sticking around for? Have a good night. Thank you. Okay, folks, we're done with the work session, very productive one, thank you. Ian, you need the paperwork from Glen Valley?
The matter of Glen Valley Associates LTD preliminary subdivision for an extension of time until August 1st, 2024. Yes, that's correct. You know it's passed. I've read the resolution and moved for adoption.
There's a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Andy? Thank you.
Aye.
We got you. Any opposed? Passed 7-0. Sorry about that.
But Julie, that date is correct, correct?
Okay.
August 1st, 2024. Yeah.
All right, next. What, Gardeners?
No, I'm sorry. I did strike it correct. Keeping Jody on her toes.
Randy, do you have the public hearing notice on Gardeners, Marino, or do you want me to do it?
I've got it.
Oh, you got it? All right, Ian's stepping up.
I think it's gonna be.
No,
Good.
It's right
no,
here.
of course.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for not requiring that you do that, right?
the matter of the application of government site plan to schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, October 4th, 2023 at 6:30 PM or sooner after this matter may be heard. I've read the resolution and move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
7. And now wasn't that worth sticking around for? I know you got here late, though. All right, we do have a meeting next week, and so we will look forward to seeing you all. It is 7:45. Can I get a final motion? Who wants to review?
To adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Randy.